Commonwealth versus Bradley is our first case to look at for mistake of law. And this is a relatively easy case to kind of get your feet wet, to understand the distinction between mistake of fact and mistake of law. So if you truly believe the gun isn't loaded and you pull the trigger, you've done some bad stuff, but you haven't done something nearly as bad as if you've pulled the trigger thinking the gun was loaded. If you've gone to the stables to reclaim your horse, and you think you have every right to do that, then you don't think you're committing a crime at all. And both larceny and burglary require you to believe that you are doing something unlawful, that you have no right to this property. And so your belief actually negates a required element, intent. But what if you think that you are doing exactly what you're doing? You have no doubt about the circumstances of the crime you're committing, but you think that it's lawful to do what you know you're doing. Well, you've heard all your life that ignorance of the law is no excuse, and there are of course exceptions to every maxim about the law you've ever heard. But this is one that actually does quite often turn out to be correct. So in this case, the defendant claims that contrary to the sign that he saw and recognized and was informed about in the police station, that it was unlawful to film using his camera phone, unlawful to film in the police station, that he had a First Amendment right to do so. And the court, of course, addresses the fact that he does not have such a First Amendment right, but also there is clear evidence that he did believe that he had that right. And the court says even if that belief were reasonable, and it doesn't actually address whether it's reasonable or not, but even if the court or jury were to believe that this were a reasonable mistake, that he really did have a good faith basis for believing that that he was allowed to film despite the law because of the First Amendment protection, that would not be a defense. That a reasonable mistake about the law is, generally speaking, and we're going to get into the next case when the generally breaks down, but generally speaking, a reasonable mistake about the law, a reasonable mistake in this case about his First Amendment right to film, contrary to what the statute or ordinance or whatever the police were relying upon said, that if he's wrong about that, he has no defense. Whereas if he were filming and didn't think he was filming, and he reasonably didn't believe he was filming, then that would be a mistake of fact. He would therefore not be intending to film if he didn't think he was actually filming. And it turns out he was. So if he thinks he's filming but thinks he's got a right to, then there's no defense. If he doesn't think he's filming but actually is, then he has a defense as a reasonable mistake of fact.